Hello everyone, my name is Kennan Wylie. I'm the Director of Percussion Studies at Marcus High School. Saturday, June 26th at 12 o'clock noon. Would love to see everybody there. Very honored to be asked by Gilbert Garcia to speak at the summer series of the Valley Percussion Festival 2021. Hello everyone, my name is Kennan Wylie. I'm the Director of Percussion Studies at Marcus High School. Very honored to be asked by Gilbert Garcia to speak at the summer series of the Valley Percussion Festival 2021. My date is going to be Saturday, June the 26th at 12 o'clock noon. Would love to see everybody there, music educators, percussionists, students, dogs, family, friend, anybody that wants to come. This is open to everybody. We're going to talk all things percussion. Hopefully if you have some questions, I can answer them. I'll talk about a few new things that I have coming out in the fall, as well as some of the products I already have out. Would love to visit with you guys and just have a nice relaxing time to discuss percussion. So I hope to see everyone there on Saturday, June the 26th at 12 o'clock noon. Don't be late.
Hi everyone, this is Jeff Queen. I'm a 4-time World Championship snare drummer and an original cast member of the Broadway show Blast. Gilbert Garcia asked me to put a little video together explaining what percussion means to me. And I've got to say, playing drums, playing music is pretty much everything to me. I would not be where I am today in my life if it wasn't for my love for drums and percussion. Started playing drums when I was about 10, got into marching band when I was 14, got into drum corps when I was 16, and to this day, I'm still involved in the activity as a consultant or as a teacher, and still have a passion for playing drums. So everybody that's in my life that's not my blood family is a result of really being involved in drum corps or being involved in music. I met some amazing people along the way, some friends that I still hold dear to my heart in this day. My wife I met because of doing drum corps and performing. And like I said, pretty much everybody and almost everything that I have in my life is a result of my passion for playing drums. So I share this with you because regardless of what you want to do in your life, you're embarking on a journey by playing percussion, playing music that can stay with you for the rest of your life, and you can make a lot of great friends in the process. So what's cool is that everybody's like-minded. Everybody wants to play. Everybody's into the music, so you can share a lot through playing drums and playing music. So I urge you to stick with it. I urge you to take advantage of the events that are around you, like the Valley Percussion Festival. And I urge you to be curious and to continue to learn about the craft of music and playing drums. Best of luck to you, and happy drumming.
There we go. Thank you. Thank you. Guys, I am so excited today for the topic that we're going to discuss and the clinician that we have with us today, our guest for today. The topic is one of my favorites, but even though the topic is developing solid beginners, I think that it it applies to all of us, whether we're literally a beginner or an intermediate or an advanced player or a beginning teacher, intermediate teacher, or an advanced teacher, because the concepts that you know help us take off seem to apply, you know, at an advanced stage. It kind of changes, but it kind of doesn't. It's more of the same, and to me, that's why it's exciting. There's a term that I have adapted over the years, and I like to say to my students, um, everything is related to everything. Meaning, when we learn eight on a hand, there's a relation to it too when we get to four mallets, whether it's rotations or vertical strokes. Everything is related to everything. So today is going to be a great example of it, and we couldn't have a better clinician, a better guest for this, guys. This gentleman has a long track record of success with his group. Um Over 30 years. Wait, I think it's 30 years that he has been teaching in Marcus High School. And with me saying that, I don't even need to say his name. I think all of us know who we're talking about. And without further ado, Mr. Kennan Wylie. How are you doing, sir?
I am doing great, Mr. Garcia. How are you?
Doing great, sir. We spoke a little bit before going live, right? And I am a huge fan of your work as an educator, of your track record as an educator, and of the successes that your program has had, sir. And it's it's unbelievable, it's amazing, and it's inspiring at the same time. And I'd like to say something to the peeps, to the public that is listening to us, is that uh, when I heard that your group won the invited percussion for TMEA's very first time around, I when I heard it was your group, sir, I was like, it couldn't start any better. The perfect group, perfect educator for all of us in the state of Texas. So I just wanted the people to know that, and to express it to you publicly, sir.
Wow, I don't even know what to say. That's a lot of kind words coming out of the gate. I really appreciate you having me here, Gilbert. It's always nice to talk to other people that do what we do, or the students, if you're listening, or anybody. I I think sometimes when you've been teaching for a long time, you got to get something right after a while. If you've been doing it for 30 years, hopefully I get something right. But yeah, it's been a great ride, and I can hope it'll continue. That's for sure. It's really really fun to do what we do. So I'm really glad to be here, and I will be glad to answer any questions or share with you what I've done, and what I see being done around the state of Texas and other states in our country. And we'll be more than happy to discuss anything.
Yes, yes, yes. So questions are definitely welcome, guys. Um, the thing is, one of the things that I like to share with our public is, when it comes to successful educators and successful artists, uh, we are all of us, no matter who we are, whether we're a beginning teacher or an advanced seasoned teacher, uh, we always say, man, I wish I could go and see a clinic from this gentleman, or I wish I could go and learn from this gentleman, or I wish I could go and observe this guy teach so I could, see what he does, so that I can bring it home and do it as well in my group. And these opportunities that the internet and the virtual world offer are just that. But the thing is, we don't have to travel all the way to Marcus High School to watch Kennan Wylie in action. Thanks to internet, we're able to bring Kennan Wylie to our house, to our device, to our place of work, wherever we're at. We're able to connect, and the neat thing is, ask him the questions that are brewing in our head. Maybe stuff that we haven't been able to do successfully, and we want to break through on that specific area. So yes, yes, yes. uh, Kennan, Okay, here we go. I thought it was a comment coming through. Um, so a little bit about you, sir, before we go on into the nuts and bolts of the of the clinic of the segment. A little bit about you and about your program, if you may.
Well, I'm from Texas. I'm a native Texan. I grew up in West Texas, and when I was in high school, I ended up moving to Austin, Texas. And so I've had a little bit of experience in different regions of our state. My instructor, I don't know if he's listening, but my instructor from pretty much fifth grade all the way through high school was Evilio Villarreal, who's actually the band director at Plano East High School.
Oh wow!
And he was really one of the guys that kind of got me started. I mean, he was with me. I tell you one of the things about Mr. V that was really cool when I was growing up, and I'm sure you guys can relate that are listening. But I was one of those guys that always needed somebody to listen to me play, like getting ready for region. Hey, can you hear this? Can I play this for you? And no matter how many times I asked, he'd always listen to me play,
Oh
and he'd always give
wow!
me some feedback. And so I'm very thankful for him for always listening. And I was one of those, if I didn't play it right, I got really ticked off, and he was able to kind of keep me focused and stuff. I was one of those perfectionists that we work with, and so he is he is a band director and a percussionist, but he's been in, I think, at Plano East for quite some time now, and I think he's going to retire, or if he's not retired, I don't know, Mr. V. I can't remember what you told me, but anyways, he was my kind of my formative teacher, and I was able to study with him. I'd taken a few lessons with George Frock when I was living in Austin, just a few, and I took from a guy named John Rogers, who was a good drum set player in the area as well, when I was in West Texas. And then that's how I got started. I ended up going to North Texas in Denton and studied with all the guys that were there. Dr. Shatroma was kind of my guy at UNT, and really kind of took his arm and kind of really made sure that I was getting everything I needed at that program, and I got more than I could bargain for. I know that when I went to, just small little story, when I went to go look at colleges, we couldn't afford to go to Eastman or any of those kind of schools back then. That was a lot to do, and they're still expensive, but they're really expensive back then. And both of my parents are teachers. We didn't really have enough money to take that. So I was going to go somewhere in Texas, and I remember going to different colleges. And when I went to the University of North Texas, um, it was a Monday, or it was a Tuesday. I'm sorry, it was a Tuesday, and they had a Monday night concert. And Doc says, I got an appointment here, but I'll get with you in 15 minutes if you want. Just walk around the school. He goes, the recital hall's on the third floor. If you want to go up there, you can. I was like, okay, cool. So me and my dad went up to the third floor, and I opened up that room, that recital hall, and I saw instruments. I didn't know what the name of these instruments were. There were so many of them. I saw these chrome looking things. I don't know what they would look like, trash cans. I didn't know what those were, all kinds of stuff. And when I saw that, I looked at my dad and said, "This is where I'm going to school," because I don't know any of that stuff, and I wanted to learn the stuff that I didn't know. And I knew that if I went to that school, I was going to learn about instruments, and I was going to learn a lot about stuff that I had no idea what existed. And so it was kind of a no-brainer for me when I saw that equipment. And I think I bring that up because that's kind of who I am. I'm very interested into all kinds of percussion, not percussion, but also concert percussion and ethnic percussion. Just everything that I saw on that stage was almost represented in that one little glimpse of what I took. And that's kind of how I've always taught. I wanted to make sure that when I taught students that they were going to get the same education that I got. I wanted to make sure they could read really well. I wanted to make sure that they were well-rounded. I wanted to make sure they
Yeah.
were musical, and I wanted to make sure that they could experience all these facets of percussion. And if you look at my program at Marcus, hopefully we're doing that. If you've ever been
Yes,
to one of our
absolutely.
concerts, you can kind of see everything on display. It's like all there. And that's just real important to me to be able to, because that's who I am. And we talked earlier before the podcast starts about the identity of the instructor really comes out in the
Yes.
kids, when you see a group play, because their experiences kind of come out in their teaching of their own students. So, if you're an educator out there, whether you're an older or younger or whatever, it doesn't really matter. But, the more experiences you have of listening to different stuff and to playing different playing opportunities, it's going to show in your teaching of your kids. The more stuff, we always tell our kids, listen to stuff, to listen to all kinds of different music. Well, the reason we're doing that is because we want them to be able to experience that so we can do music with them and experience different types of things. um, you know, one of the things about Marcus High School that's a little bit kind of a bummer, but I understand why we don't have one. But we don't really have a jazz band, and that's just part of our program. We just can't fit that in with everything else. And that's one of the things that I try to make up for in different ways by having ethnic percussion ensembles, and then I try to work in drum set in some of our ensembles just to kind of let these kids get some experience at that, because not having a jazz band, they kind of miss that opportunity. So I want to make sure that they can kind of experience what I did when I was their age. And believe me, I think they are. They probably are experiencing more than I was when I was in high school.
Yeah.
But there's no problem with that at all. But I love sharing with kids everything that I know. And when I learn something, I tell them. Sometimes we had a rehearsal a couple of weeks ago, and I was sitting down with some kids, and I said, "Man, I saw the coolest drummer ever." And I start showing them, what I saw on Facebook, just a really cool player, and I was extremely impressed and stuff. So I share with them a lot of the stuff that I see because, it made an impression on me, and we'll see if it makes an impression on them as well.
Yes, 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 yes. I totally agree. And yeah, um, Kenan, um, when it comes to developing beginners, from the very first day of beginner class to
Hmm.
aligning it to all the way to high school and seniors, and well, not necessarily seniors, but it does include them. Uh, uh, the idea is that we start beginners so that our programs can have success as the years progress in seventh grade and eighth grade, ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th, in um, all region competitions, in all state competitions, in solo and ensemble competitions, in soloist competitions, and in group competitions. Um, what if could you tell us? I guess in as few words as possible. Um, what's your take on aligning a beginner to a successful program in high school?
Sure. I don't know if it's a really short answer, but I'll kind of take a stab at it. First of
Hmm.
all, as percussion instructors, we're probably one of the few teachers that are going to be on the middle school and the high school campus that are going to see our students for anywhere from 6 to 7 years, depending when you start
Hmm.
your beginners. I
Hmm.
mean, when I start a kid, we start in sixth grade. Now, when I start them, I'm going to see them in sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th, 11th, 12th. So I am one of the few, I'm probably the only teacher they're going to have for 7 years. That's a long time.
Yeah,
I mean, your
yeah,
English teacher is just going to have you for a semester or a year, and that's it. And then you don't have that teacher anymore. So how that's a big impact, and having that ability to be with those students for 7 years. Now, I don't want to assume that everybody is listening to this is in the same boat I am in. Maybe you just see your kids when they come to the high school and you only have them for 4 years, but regardless, we do see our kids for a number of years. um, for me, I spend a lot of my time at the middle schools because whatever comes from the middle schools is coming to the high school. And it makes the high school job easier if they can play when they come out of the middle school. And then, I think everybody would agree with that.
yes,
If they're coming into the high school and they've got some pretty good basic training and they know how to read and they know their way around the instruments, then when they come to high school, we just take that, and we just keep pounding it, and they get around better players. And so a lot of the times when they make that transfer from middle to high school, a lot of that improvement is going to happen when they start seeing the older players and are like, wow. wow, that's really cool. But they're going to be able to get to that point because they have some basic training and skills that are going to allow them to kind of push to that level. If they come up to the high school and they can't do anything at all, like a beginner, well, then it's going to be hard for them to see what, they see the other kids, they're not going to be able to get there because they don't really have a lot of
Yeah.
skills. So, starting at the 6th grade, I'm at my beginners class every day. You know, once again, I know everybody's different around the country. I'm very lucky that in Texas, where I teach, I see my kids at least 4 to 5 times a week, and my beginners, and I see my 7th and 8th graders about twice a week. And so, and then you go, when you go to the high school? Well, I actually don't go to the high school if for me, my high school class doesn't start till 2:15. So from 7:30 to 2:15, I don't even step foot on the high school most days. You can't even find me there. You'll see me, you won't see me there.
Oh,
I know
wow.
the high school band director. It took him a while to get used to it. He goes, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm at the middle schools all the time. That's kind of where I live." And the reason is because if those kids are getting developed, then when they come to the high school, I don't need to be there for 7 hours. I just need to be there for 2 hours or something, and I'm going to teach them in the same class, and we'll get her done. Um, but in the so the way our system is set up, and I can just kind of refer to that is that my beginners come in. You know, I want my beginners to be able to do certain things by themselves. I would like to continue to play singles, play doubles, accents, play, flams, and all those basic rudiments. I want them to be able to read quarters, eighths, sixteenths, triplets, eighth note triplets, 16th note triplets with all the values of the rests. I'd like them to be able to count out loud, tap their foot. Um, I'd like them to be able to have basic knowledge of how to perform, on the timpani, where as far as tuning, as far as the range of the drums, hand position on pretty much all the instruments, whether it's keyboards, snares, or timpani. We get basic knowledge on all the accessory instruments, as far as tambourine, crash cymbal, suspended cymbal, bass drum. And then we get a little exposure to odd meter time, not a lot, but we do that towards the end of the year. And we also work on, cut time. So we're getting to reading ties and values like that. Um, but for me, one of the biggest things that I want my kids to be able to do, to be honest with you, the technique, I want them to have technique. I want them to be able to read. Because when kids can read, they have untapped potential. They can do whatever you want them to do, because
Yeah.
when they read music, man, we can learn it fast. We can, and the more they read, the more they love to play. They love to play. And everybody says, do you have a hard time teaching mallets? And the answer to that question is absolutely no. I don't have, my snare drummers are my best mallet players. And some of my mallet players are my best snare drummers, if you get my point. They play everything. All these kids are very well rounded. And we could spend a whole podcast or two or three just on the first year of beginner class and how we do stuff. We'll touch a little bit on the book in just a second, but as
Hmm.
far as aligning my high school, my middle school, my high school kids, I want to make sure that my beginners can pretty much do what I just mentioned. Then when they get into 7th and they get into 8th grade, they enter band, and so I'm not pulling them out 5 days a week or 4 days a week. I'm only pulling them out about twice a week. And so when I do that, we're working on all region music, or working on an ensemble, or I may go into their rehearsals and work on their band music with them. I usually don't take my kids out to work on band music because, once again, these kids can read. So they don't really need to be taken out to learn how to read quarter notes and eighth notes because they can already play that. What they need my help on, and what the band directors need help on, is me standing behind them or by the band director or the conductor and talking about balance and blend, and we need to use that instead of these cymbals, or those mallets don't work well on this instrument, stuff like that. So the days of me pulling them out and working on a march in the back room, we're not doing that. That's just not something that I do. Now,
Yeah.
a lot of people may disagree with that. There's just really no reason to do that because my kids can read at a level that we would just go back there and play it. And it's not gonna, our problems exist within the ensemble. And
Yes.
I try to not pull them out a ton unless the director wants me to. Sometimes the conductor at the middle school will say, "Hey, can you take them out? We're really working on this chart, and I prefer if they're not in for a couple of days." I'm like, "Sure, I'll take them. That's not a big deal." But more times than not, they would like them in rehearsal because there are ensemble skills that they need to learn, and they can only learn those by being in the actual ensemble.
Yes.
I can teach them percussion ensemble, but it's not the same as band ensemble skills. They're a little different,
Yes.
similar but different. Watching a conductor is, the whole skill in itself, and be able to play with the conductor from that far back in the room. So we talk a lot about that and we work on that. And so that's what they're doing in seventh and eighth grade. Towards the eighth grade year, I'm kind of getting them ready to enter the high school. So we start working on skills that will help them, as they enter whether it's kind of starting to get more into formalities, or if it's more technical stuff. We kind of work that transition in the eighth grade year. And, this whole time, Gilbert, I think there's a lot of people who probably agree with this, but this whole time, I never knew this was part of my, I never knew this was going to be a part of my job requirement, but maybe more so than I ever imagined. I'm working on recruit. I'm working on it every day. Are you going to stay
Yeah.
in band? Oh, great. We're going to see you next year, right? I mean, it's really amazing how much we have to work on recruiting. You would think that drums would sell itself. Everybody wants to play drums, blah blah blah, but it's not always that way, and we have to work on actively recruiting kids to be in the program and to stay with it when they're in high school. We don't take it for granted that just because I start a beginner that they're going to be there in high school.
Yes.
To sports, they're going to get into other things, and so their interest may start to move a little bit. So we're constantly doing things to try to keep them really interested in the program, and wanting to continue their music all the way through high school. So
Yes.
that's one of the constant things that we don't even really talk about as percussionists, because we think that's something we don't have to talk about, but it's something that I think
Yes.
about probably, if not every day, every other day,
Yes.
Uh, everybody hates that when you walk into a school. Mr. Wiley, can I talk to you for a minute? And you're like, oh no, I know where this is going.
Oh, yeah.
I've lost my passion or whatever. There's always one of
Yeah.
those things. And I think we can avoid that if we really keep in focus with where they're at and kind of how they're feeling about everything, and trying to keep them really interested in what we're doing. So when they come to the high school, at that point, I will say, backing up real quick with the sixth grade, in sixth grade, all my students play at least one solo, usually a snare solo, and they play in one ensemble. When they're in seventh grade, they all play a solo. They all play three ensembles. They play one at Christmas, one at solo contest, and one at the end of the year. And then when they do the same thing in the eighth grade. So when I see my kids, when they come in as freshmen, they played at least 7 to 8 percussion ensembles, and they played at least 3 to 4 solos. So if they're doing that, I think they're going to be okay. You know what I'm saying? I think they're going to be
Yeah.
ready to move to the high school level. And so when we get to the high school level, of course, I mean, I think that curriculum almost runs itself. Everybody says, what books do you use at the high school? Well, we don't really use books per se, because our curriculum is based upon what we do. Like, for instance, if we have all region, then we're working on all region as soon as we come back, from summer, and that's in August, September, October, November, and then we usually kind of end that around Thanksgiving. And as soon as that's over, all the kids select a solo, and then we get ready for solo contest while we're passing out ensembles. And our ensemble program at the high school is very extensive. We do a lot of our ensemble program is as active as our marching program. If you could imagine doing drumline, but we do it with percussion ensemble in the spring. So how people do indoor, well, we do kind of the same thing that indoor people do, but we do it with percussion ensemble. And
Yeah.
so it's a very active part of our high school thing. I mean, we have, we do we usually have every kid in a quartet or a quintet. We have large ensembles. We have the Brazilian ensemble. We have a steel band that kind of in sometimes it's in, sometimes it's out, but we do have a steel band that kind of contributes to everything as well. So we have, different parts of our program that are real active. And I try to expose the kids to a lot of literature. But getting back to what I was saying about reading, that it may be the most important thing, in my opinion, about trying to get my kids to be able to do is to read. I want them to be able to read. I think the technique, we can all agree that they need technique. They need to be able to play really, really well. But I want my kids to be able to read really well, because the more they read and the better they read, the more stuff they want to consume. It's like kids that read books. When they read a book, they want to read another book and another book and another book. And what to do? It gets them smarter when they read more books. Same thing
Yes.
with when they start to read more music, they get better at it and they want more. I want my kids to be able to go in the music store and open up a book and go, that looks like a pretty good solo. I think I'll take that, because they can read
Yeah.
it.
Yes.
They just don't look at it and go, oh, it's too hard. It's got, it's too many notes on a page. They probably can't digest it because they can't read it. So it's a real big deal for me, the reading. And that's kind of where I get into kind of one of my books that I wrote. And it
Yes.
gets
Yes.
into reading. Now, you asked me this. If I can keep rolling, I'll just keep rolling. Is that cool? If
Yes.
anybody has
Yes.
a
Yes.
question,
Yes. Yes.
let me know. Um,
Yes.
you asked me earlier, I think before we even started today, why did you write your book? And there is an answer to that. I will share that very honestly with you. And this is going to sound a little weird, but the reason I wrote my book is that I had been teaching for probably about, it would have been about 12 years already. And I was using a book that was real popular at the time. And I remember sitting down with somebody and they said, well, how much of the book do you really use? And I ended up crossing a lot of the book out and I only came up with like about 13 pages that I used out of about a, 60-page book. And I was like, this is not very good. So maybe I should
Yeah.
write my own book. And but there's another reason is is I don't know if I really learned to drum the right way from the start when I started playing. What I mean by that is I really got into how to touch the stick and how to play. And this is going to sound really crazy, but I really couldn't let the stick rebound. I had marched corps for, I marched regiment for 3 years back in the early 80s and was very successful in a lot of, solo competitions, and went to PAS and won a bunch of competitions. But I never felt like I played the right way. I didn't like the way that I played. I had to warm up a long time and I just didn't like the way that I was drumming. And so I
Yes.
remember going to a clinic and I went to see, this was when I was teaching at Marcus, by the way, in the early 90s, mid 90s.
Mhm.
And I went to see Tom Hannum do a clinic. And it's ironic because now we're actually pretty good friends now.
Mhm.
But at the time, I didn't know him. And he was doing a clinic. And, I was listening to it thinking, I know everything. And he was playing. And I was like, he's an okay player. But then I started listening to him play. He pulled out the sticks and he played like a roll. And it wasn't even very fast. It was the sound of the roll. And I listened to him play and I was like, my rolls don't sound like that. Like, what is going on? How come I don't sound like what he sounds? I like the way he sounds when he touches the drum, and I don't like the way I sound. So I went to the drawing board and I got to figure this out. So at the time I was working on my master's at North Texas and I was studying with Ed Soph, the great jazz drummer Ed Soph. And so Ed had me kind of working, really trying to relax me and get me using a lot of fingers and stuff. And he was able to crack through a little bit. And so was Dr. Shadroma. And with just a lot of probably more work than I've ever put on anything in my life, guess what I could do? I was able to, I don't know if you can see that over here. Hold on. I was able to, I learned to let the stick rebound. It took me
Wow.
15 years to let it go. And so what I decided to do, getting back to the book, I decided, I don't want my students to go through what I went through, because now let me back up to when I was in drum corps in the early 80s, they didn't talk a lot about rebound. It was
No.
all kind of, everything was downstroke. There wasn't a lot of rebound because we played on plastic heads,
Yes.
so it was a lot different. And that word wasn't tossed around a lot. Hey, just let it rebound. You do a legato stroke. I'm like, what are you
Yeah.
talking about? It wasn't talked about. Yet I saw people playing with a sound. And I remember another thing I went to, not to get off the subject, because I will get off the subject. I went to see Greg Bissonette do a clinic at Burton Mays that's around the same time. Really weird. Isn't it weird too that I didn't even plan this, but Greg Bissonette and I wrote a book together, and I didn't even know
Yes.
that. I didn't know him when I went to see his clinic. Anyways, I went to see his clinic, and he brought this snare drum out to the front of the stage, and he started playing like 16th notes. He was going, he was doubling, and he was going back and forth, and it sounded so amazing. I was like, I can't do that. I just won PAS 3 times in a row, and I can't do that. Like, what's wrong? Something is wrong. Like, this is not correct. So I just, I really was wanting to learn how to do that. So that's when I at North Texas, I was working on my master's. I really got to that. So getting back to the book, when I decided to write my book, I decided that I was going to give kids an opportunity to learn how to rebound the stroke and do nothing else while they're learning to do that. So
Yes.
if you're familiar with my book, the first like 9 chapters, not even the first 9, the first 14 chapters of the book was all rebound. There's no controlled strokes. And I did that on purpose because I didn't I it really takes kids a long time to learn to rebound the stick. Some
Yes.
kids can't do it after a year or 2 years or 3 years. They can't
Yes.
rebound. And it's such a hard easy concept that it's difficult. It's very difficult because they want to hold the stick. You know what I'm saying? They don't want to let it go. And so I thought, I got to try to write a book that can give these kids like almost anywhere from 9 to 18 weeks where they don't have to worry about anything, but they can learn quarter notes, they can learn eighth notes, they can learn 16th notes, they can learn rhythms, they can bounce the stick, they can do all this without having to control it. And to me, just my little opinion, that's a big deal. I know that
Yes.
when I listen to my high school kids play, they sound a little bit different than other groups I've heard play before, and
Hmm.
I think a lot of it is the way that they touch the stick and the way that they let it come off the drum. And I
Yes.
hear that even more in their mallet playing than I do their snare drumming because it really starts to make a big difference when they get on keyboards. And when they get on, say for instance, we play in a percussion ensemble and we're playing on toms and we love, we'll play a lot of like Christine's piece, Pyroglyphathon. We'll do that and we have toms all over the place and they sound so good playing on it because they're just playing with good strokes.
Yes.
And it transfers to drum set obviously amazingly, and just the whole rebound, the approach to letting the stick rebound is, I think that there's a lot of people that just don't spend enough time doing that, and then they're worried to get to the accents and all that. Some people will start accents on week 3. I just don't do that because I feel like there's not there. I feel like it's too powerful for a stroke to just give it 3 weeks and go on to something else. And I know
Yes.
kind of rambling, but man, that rebound thing is a big deal to me. And every time we play 8 on a hand, that's what they're doing. They're rebounding the stick. They're letting it come back by itself. And when you go listen to if you go to a local drum contest and you go to the parking lot and you listen to the groups play 8 on a hand, you can hear the ones that are rebounding and the ones that aren't. To me, it's very
Yes.
noticeable. It doesn't take a long time for me to figure it out at all. And it really comes from, I think as teachers, we need to be able to hear it. If we can't do it, we need to be able to hear it. Um, I just think that that's a big deal. I think that's what separates a lot of groups is the way they sound and their touch. I know that your last clinic, I watched a little bit of Norm Wine. He got into the whole touch. What is
Yes.
touch? And man, I was going, yeah, that's exactly what it's all about. And if you're going to get off this rebound stroke early, I don't think the kid's touch is going to be what you want it to be unless you spend a little more time developing that. And
Yes.
and then so anyways, that's why I wrote the book, and the way I wrote it is because I really wanted my students not to have to worry about any kind of control until, we get to the end of the first semester. And I really don't start accents or anything when I teach my beginners till probably middle of December, around there. And that's when we start to do accents and we start the downstroke and the tap stroke and the upstroke. We kind of get all that going on. But up until that point, it's just one stroke. Boom, boom. It's just a full legato stroke. When we get to
Yes.
dynamics, which is in chapter 9, we do have to talk about putting the sticks at different heights, which there's control in that, but I try to
Yes.
kind of just, close my mouth a little bit when I say the word control, and I try
Yeah.
not to, get into that too early, but just to let them know, because the reason I bring in that is because we need to start doing dynamics, and
Yes.
there's dynamics
Yes.
till we get to chapter 9, and I wanted to make sure the rest of the book has dynamics in it. So I couldn't wait any longer. So when I got to chapter 9, I had to put in some dynamics, and that's where there's a little bit of talk about, hey, you may have to avoid letting the stick rebound too much at this height or
Yeah.
whatever. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of logic to the book, and I think it's sequenced really, really well. I mean, I wrote the snare drum book in 2000, and you know what? I honestly wouldn't change a lot of things about it. Now, speaking about that, we are coming out with a 20-year anniversary edition in not at TMEA 2022. So next year we're gonna have, it's gonna be the same book, but it's gonna have some more appendix in the back. It's gonna be in a new font. It's gonna be really cool. Matter of fact, everybody out there that uses any of my books, it's gonna be bigger. So you're not gonna have to squint at some of the lines. It's gonna be blown up.
Oh,
So
that
we've
is
we've
awesome.
redone the whole book. Yeah, it's gonna look really, really nice, and we're not really going to tamper with much of the stuff in there, but we're just going to make a few small edits here and there, and I think it'll be, just give it a little bit of a facelift, and add some. We're going to add some about 10 or 15 pages of appendix. If people want to
Yeah.
repeat some stuff, we can. Maybe a couple of new warm-ups in the back of the book as well. But it's 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 going to be fun. We've been working on that.
Yes. Yes. Wow. That is new to me, and I can't wait to see that one. I can't wait to see that one. And one of the things that it really turned me onto your concepts was the fact that I remember in a conversation we had about 8 years ago, I think, and you mentioned I repeat stuff with my students so much that uh, you know people would probably think I overdo it, and you know uh, that resonated with me because I felt like no matter how much time we would spend with middle school kids, sixth through eighth, no matter how much time we spent on developing a nice rebound stroke, I always felt like it wasn't enough. That was my experience, and what I saw. And when you said that, it was like I thought I was spending too much, so it made me feel a little bit better about my teaching, because this was early in my career, when we had this conversation, and now I see the connection between your book and that concept.
hmm Yeah, I mean, repetition is the key to success. I think when it comes to playing percussion, you're building up muscle memory, and you're building up muscle memory and muscle memory, and that's what it's a lot about, especially when it comes to technique. Um, I'm not so sure when it comes to rhythm, repeating it over and over is always the best thing, because then they just start playing patterns. And I do want them to learn patterns, but I also want them to be able to mix up those rhythms so they really understand them. And I think that comes in you getting the counting and stuff that as well. But when it comes to pure technique and just learning, some drumming skills, I think repetition is the way. There's no other alternative, and
Yeah.
and kids that struggle in my class are usually the ones that don't practice at home.
Yeah.
They're getting it in class, then eventually the ones that are practicing at home are going to kind of surpass them because their muscle memory is
Yes.
getting better. And
Yes.
that's another challenge with today's young kids, is they have so much going on. It's really hard for them to figure out how to practice for 30 or 45 minutes. And nowadays we're just hoping for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
they have so many things going on, it seems like it's hard for them to be able to do the repetition that I need them to do. And some of the kids that are really, really smart, sometimes it's hard for them to value the repetition, because like, I can already play this, and I'm like, well, I can too, but I repeat it over and over, because it's
Yeah.
it's it's going to keep your hands locked, and it's going to keep everything where you want it to be. And when you don't repeat those things, it could really leave. I think the best example of that, or a good example, is when we leave for Thanksgiving break or Christmas break and we come back and there's
Mm-hmm.
some kids that, playing a hand, you're like, oh my gosh, what just happened? Like they haven't
Yeah.
picked their stick up in a week. And I
Yeah.
show you see what happens when you don't play for a week. I mean, you can really lose a lot, especially the younger you are. My high school kids can take 2 or 3 days off and they can come back and they're okay. But
Yes.
man, beginner takes 3 or 4 days off, man, you can see it all over the place. It's real
Yes.
noticeable.
Yes. It's pretty to me what you just said, sir. To me, that's pretty. Uh, 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 um, it's pretty exciting to notice how the younger or the less the muscle memory has cooked.
Yeah.
It shows up when they don't play for a bit, but the longer the muscle memory has been cooked, you can it I've seen that it's actually the opposite. Like when they practice a lot, and then they take a break for a few days, when they come back, it kind of just makes everything gel, and they can actually play it a lot smoother.
No doubt, no doubt. I mean, it's just that repetition is a big deal when it comes to improving your percussion skills, and not only just on drumming, but on keyboards. Everything. Building up the muscle memory to know where your notes are and to get a feel for that instrument is just as important as it is on snare drum. Um, One of the things I wanted to add to this is a little bit unrelated, but at the same time not. We've talked before at Team EA, and every time there's a Team EA, which is for you guys that not know what that is, that's the Texas Music Educators Conference, and it's once a year. Every state has a convention or a conference, and so I usually will do a booth. And the reason I do a booth there is not really to sell books, to be honest with you. It's really just to answer questions that people that are using the books, like, "Hey, how do you do this?" Blah blah blah. I mean, I spend more time talking than I do anything else at that convention, which is great. People got questions, and you want to answer as many as you can. And so one of the things that I've wanted to do for a long time, and I just didn't have the time, but last year with the pandemic, I was able to have a little bit more time on the weekends because we weren't really doing marching band at a full level that we normally do. And so I was able to kind of create a little more time to do something. And so I worked on a project that's kind of out on my website, and I wanted to tell everybody about it because you may like it, you may not, and that I know and then how I do it. A lot of people want to know how do you do this? How do you teach your kids accents? What do you do? How do you get your kids to read mallets? Blah blah blah. And so what I've done, I have this virtual classroom on my website. If you go to kwiley.com, and you will see like there's a curriculum, and it goes through. I want to say there's 37 lessons, and each lesson has like a snare drum lesson and a keyboard lesson within it. And then some of the keyboard ones later on switch to different percussion instruments like bass drum, timpani, just everything. Everything that I
Yes.
cover in my books is covered in there. Now you don't have to use my book to use these videos, because I put PDFs of all the exercises I'm doing and the examples are on PDF, so you can download them if you want. It's not a big deal. If you have the book, it's a lot easier, but you don't have to have the book. But the reason I bring this up is because I go into real detail about everything I do and how I do it. And it's almost like, if you want to know what I, do it at my middle schools is in those videos.
Oh,
In
wow.
every video that I do a warm-up session on each one. Now, you want to talk about repetition. I played all of those warm-ups every video. So I would do 8 on a hand. I'd do it twice at each tempo. Like by, I don't know, I don't have the chart in front of me, but I think like around week 21, I'm going 8 on a hand at 100, 110, 120, 130, 140, and I'll play it with the student. So your students could actually play along with me, and I go through all of the tempos. And there's a warm up sequence for every video. So it's
Oh,
pretty intense. Each of the videos is probably about 40 minutes long. And so, I don't know if it's great a tool, but I think it's kind of cool. Now, here's something that I thought about when I put this together is you can get all the videos for $8 a month. It's really cheap. $8 a month, and you can see all whatever you want to see. If you don't like it, you can do 7-day trial and say, "Yeah, this is awful." But there's also something for $32, and that's what we call the assessment package, which I'm surprised nobody, or not nobody, there's been a couple of people, but more people don't take advantage of this. I think Gilbert said at the beginning of this that all this virtual stuff is awesome. Like, I love being able to talk to people that you would never be able to find because you can do it virtually and you have access. But
Yes.
when it comes to one other thing that virtual can't do, it can't really assess what you're learning. So what I thought, well, wouldn't it be cool if you did some of my lessons and then you go to my Google Classroom and you submit them and I'll give you assessment on the lesson that you just played. Huh. What do you think about that? So what happens is you can sign up for $32 a month. That's not that much. You get to send in 4 lessons of your choosing, and then I'll give you a written assessment on each one. So I'll say something like, "Hey, when you played lesson 1, your thumb needs to be a little bit more on the side of the stick, and you're squeezing too hard. Try to relax a little bit more on the stick, and let's scoot back a little bit on the stick." And so I'll give you all this written assessment that you can go, "Wow, cool. Somebody told me what to do and how to do it." Like, for
Yes.
instance, you take golf lessons and you just you just do it virtually. That's really cool. But if somebody can actually give you some golf lessons and show you what
Yes.
you're doing, you get some feedback. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can read stuff in a book and go, "Oh, okay, that's how you do it. Oh, that makes sense." But then when I go out, if I'm still shanking the ball, I need somebody to be there and go, "Oh, what you're really doing is when this is going on, you're doing this, or this
Yeah.
is causing this to happen." And so by getting some sort of assessment, that's another part of learning, is you got to get some sort
Yes.
of an assessment. So I tried my best to do that with this little project. It's a small, I did it all in my little studio, but it turned out okay. And if you're interested, it's not a big investment. You can kind of check it out and see what you think.
Yes.
Feel free to email me and go, "Man, this is really bad," or I learned a little bit of stuff, and you got to be patient with it. I will tell you, one of the things we talked about, Gilbert and I, was
Yes.
patience. And you have to be patient as an educator and as a student. And you can't just fast forward through everything. You kind of have to make sure that you're letting things, marinate for a little bit. It's really easy to go, "Well, you know what? I'm on lesson 3. We're not going fast enough. I need to be going a lot faster." No, not necessarily. Just wait for lesson 7 to get there, or lesson 10 to get there, or whatever lesson it starts to play a lot faster that you like it. I think that a lot of times we tend to rush things and we don't give it enough time. And as teachers, we're kind of guilty of that as well. I was talking to Gilbert before we got online to this today, and sometimes we make judgments based upon something not going really well at that time, but maybe it's not going well because the students just haven't gotten under their belt. Maybe they will get it if you give them a little bit more time before you make a decision on, "That wasn't a good idea," or "I need to do this instead." I think that it really makes a big difference if you can have some patience. Okay, do you want me to read this? We have a comment that says, "How do you balance rebound when how do you balance that?" Okay, let me read the whole thing first. This will make a little more sense. It says, "I tend to see a lot of high school players who spend so much time rebounding the stick, they have really hard time executing flams, soft dynamics, clear accent tap ratio, and other things that require fine muscle control. If anything, I see controlled strokes neglected. How do you balance that with what you're saying about the importance of developing rebound?" I would say that's something that you're going to have to work on. Um, as much as you work on the rebound. The reason that I probably circle back to the rebound is because at the end of the day, now this is going to be a little weird. At the end of the day, I need my kids to be able to play all the percussion instruments really well with a beautiful sound. The controlled stroke is going to help that, but it's not going to help them as much as letting the stick rebound and getting a pure sound. For instance, when I play drum set, um, it doesn't sound really good when I start like holding the stick down. I use a much more relaxed approach on the drum set as far as, you know, keyboard playing the same thing, timpani the same thing. I am in no way saying that we shouldn't practice the controlled stroke. It's just that I think I like to get that. I like to get the rebound up and going so that they really can start to develop that. I will say that when I finished my first year of percussion with my beginners, even though we spend probably, I would say 60%, maybe 65%, 60% on snare drum and probably 40% on keyboard, I think that they end up playing the keyboard better because they have a better sound on the keyboard instrument, and it happens that way all the time. I'm not sure why that is, but they do develop that. And I would agree with James is that some of my kids do have a hard time holding the stick down because we've been working on the rebound a lot. But I think once again, it's just like being patient. And I have a little patience with them, and then we kind of zero in that on that second part of the year, the beginner year we really zero in on controlling that stick. But at the same time, you know, playing our eights every day with a nice relaxed stroke and then getting into you know, accent exercises and applying, you know, the technique we need to use to be able to hold the stick down. But I agree. I have had some students that have had some issues with that, but I think it kind of works itself out because I think they have ability to really hold that stick down, especially the older the kid gets as they start to mature and their muscles start to mature in their hands. I think they can hold that stick down a lot easier once they start to get a little stronger in their hands and their fingers. So, you know, that's a great question, and I'm not gonna say that that's not a problem for me because I have the same problem. But I do think that having that rebound stroke is something that I would, you know, if I had to take one or the other, if you're gonna force me to take one or the other, I'm gonna take the rebound stroke all day over the controlled stroke. But when it comes to drumline, you have to have all that control playing. I totally get it, and so it's very important to have an equal mix, no doubt. Hope that helped a little bit.
Absolutely, it makes a lot of sense. And I Robert Wateo, his comment, slow cooking is better than microwave cooking, and it goes along the lines that we were talking about. You know, young muscle memory, right? Is a little bit wobbly, but when you get mature muscle memory, it's really dialed in, and
Yeah.
it can sometimes, you know, because of situations that when we're going to competition, sometimes all of a sudden, you know, your time is moved up and you don't have much time the time that you thought you had to warm up, and a lot of the
Mm.
times your kids go in there and they're cold, but they can play, and they can play it because we've spent a long time doing it. Yeah.
You know, I was talking to a friend not to about a week ago, and he's going to do a clinic at this driver. I think his name is
Oh
Matt
yeah, yeah,
Cohen.
yeah.
Matt, if you're out there, peace. Um, and he was talking about his clinic is going to be about muscles in the hand, and you know how younger kids deal with you know less ability to do things with the stick because their muscles haven't matured. And
Yeah.
I think it kind of gets into a lot of the things that we're playing with beginners. I mean, there's just some kids that are going to get it at different times. Not everybody's going to get it at the same time. And you know, I think um, you know, I don't, I think where I differ a little bit with some teachers is when I have a beginner class, I spend so much of my time with the kids that aren't getting it than the ones that are getting it. And because it's like my mission in life, I want everybody to be able to do it. And so
Yes.
I'll spend so much time with the kids that can't that you know, I think I'm boring the kids that can do it over there because I'm working with the kids that can't do it. But, you know, you just have to realize that some of them are going to get it at a different time. Not every kid's going to get it
Yes.
at the same time. And that gets back to the patience, and it gets back to the, you know, the optimism of the teacher. Like you just can't give up on a kid because
No.
he can't get it, you know. And I I've seen miracles, and I'm sure we all have. I mean, I've seen a kid not get squat, and then all of a sudden they're one of your best players at your high school. So
Yes.
it's
Yes.
just, you cannot give up on a kid, no matter how bad they may sound, or what's happening in that first year or even the second year. You just don't know what's going on with that kid, even outside of percussion. Maybe he's having family problems, or maybe he's got some health problems. But just say the kid is not having any of those problems, but just can't get it with his hands. Sometimes it just takes some growing up, and some of his muscles in his body to be able to do what you want him to be able to do. You know, and that
Yes.
could be controlling the stick, that could be letting it rebound, it could be holding the stick. I mean, just a lot of different things could be going on. So he's going to give an interesting clinic on Tuesday. Some people might want to go Facebook that, because I'm really interested to hear what he has to say about
Yes.
the development of our hands, especially at younger kids, because he's done some
Yes.
research. So it's very
I
interesting.
the a little bit on that is I'm not an expert on the subject at all, but what I've read is um, bigger muscles tend to learn stuff faster. Smaller muscles tend to take a long time. A good example is, and that's in the body in general. For example,
Mhm.
wind players, they have to repeat so much, and yet, after a while, even long tones, they can't seem to get the embouchure there, right?
Yeah.
Despite the fact that they're doing it so much. Well, small muscles tend to be pretty stubborn, and it takes a lot of training to be able to get them dialed in. And I'm really interested to see what he has to say, because
Yeah.
that's
It's really interesting, and if it comes back to the teacher as well, you just have to be really patient and hopeful, and just never give up on a student. You just don't know what
yes,
what can happen. I mean, you can never. I think that's maybe one of my better qualities as a
yeah,
teacher is I always have, like, okay, this kid sounds, wow, this kid's not doing well at all, and but I those are the ones that I spend all my time in class with. Like, if you come
yes,
watch me teach a beginner class, I'm working with the kids that can't do it.
yes,
And it's just because I want them to be able. And here's the thing: if you don't help them, then your class is going to start to do this. And
yes,
you're the
yes,
have-nots and the haves, and you want to try to keep everybody within the same zip code. You know what I'm saying? And if you start to get a
yes.
lot of separation, it's hard to teach your class that way. Um,
And it starts, I think that at that point, it starts also falling into the recruitment.
uh-huh.
This starts happening, and these kids start to like wander off, like,
Yeah,
you know uh,
yeah,
I can't do this, or he doesn't pay attention to me,
yeah,
or whatever it may be. It's very important. And
yeah.
one of the what you're saying happened. I've seen it happen in my case personally. I had a student in eighth grade. He was the lowest chair, second to the lowest chair in my group. Okay, he worked his butt off. He worked hard, and when we went to all region, he landed higher than my first chair. And when I heard the recordings, I was like, oh wow, like you could really tell his improvement a lot. And to a degree, I did what you were saying. I spent a lot of extra time with him, and it
Mhm.
helped. Now he's really into it. He's really looking to high school and being in high school. His attitude is dialed in, and his playing is dialed in. So I think that you're really into something with that point that you've shared with us.
One of the things that somebody told me that I kind of knew, but he said it the right way. He came and listened to some of my kids play a couple years back, and we were doing some ensembles. And he said, everybody has great players at all these high schools. They really do. Like, you can go around Texas, and the top three or four kids are as good as any school around. Everybody's got the top dogs.
Yeah.
but it's in that middle to lower tier where you start to hear the difference. And he says in your groups you don't hear that difference. He goes, when you hear your middle and your low groups, they really play pretty well. Like you can't tell. He says you can tell you put a lot of time into those lower and middle groups. And he goes, that's a big deal. He goes, you can really hear that in the overall vibe of the group.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think that's what's important. And I think that goes to what I was saying earlier, is that I spend a lot of time with the kids that can't do it. Just it's fun to work with the great players. It really is. Don't get me wrong. I love to, but a lot of times those players they're gonna be successful without me. They
Yes.
need me a little bit. They need me a little bit. The kids that can't play need me a lot of bit. you
Yes.
know
Yes.
and I need to spend more time with them. And it's very easy to go, play with the kids that can do really well, and, you know, sit around with them and talk about how good that
Yeah.
sounded and stuff like that. But that's not really helping the whole program.
Yes.
Once those kids leave, who's going to take over? You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
got to have somebody. So you got to start working with those young kids.
Yes.
And I mean, for instance, small example, this current year that's coming up, we've had a camp with our incoming kids, and my baseline is 3 freshmen and 2 sophomores, and none of them have ever played bass drum in their life. So what did I spend my time all? I'm hanging out with these 5, and the snares and the tenors. I don't really do anything with them because they can already play, so they're on their own. They're doing their own thing, and I do like to hang out with them. But if I sit there and hang out with them all the time, what's going to happen to these 5 kids? They're not going to know what's going on. So every time we have a rehearsal, I'm standing by those 5 kids. I'm
Yeah.
not even in
Yeah.
front of the snare line. I'm back by the basses, just kind of, just I spend the whole rehearsal by them, nobody else,
Yes.
because
Wow.
they need that
Yes.
nurturing. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And so,
Yes.
this is all the same stuff, whether you guys are teaching high school or middle school. It's just so relatable. And we all
Yes.
spend a lot of time with all those age levels, whether it's middle school or high school. Hopefully, you're in a situation where you can work with both the kids. Um, but it's the same approach as far as I'm concerned, as far as spending time with kids that are struggling. I really think you gotta hang with the people that are having problems, because if you don't,
Yeah.
um, you're gonna have more problems when you put them in the group,
Yeah. It's like a
and
boat. You don't. You
that's
don't.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's never
It's
gonna
like a
go away.
boat. If you. Yeah. It's like a boat. You have a hole in it, and you don't address it. It's gonna get bigger. The only way that you can go and really reinforce it is go addressing it, really make it stronger than the rest, and now you're gonna have a successful boat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta work on every student, and
Yes.
um, it's it's a fun time. There's no
Yeah.
doubt about it. It's really
I
good.
have a question for you, Ken, and recruitment. And I'm talking fifth grade. What do
Uh-huh.
you do when you recruit? What's your approach to recruiting fifth graders? Uh, when you're actually there on site and you're going to test kids, what do you do? What do you look for? Do you interview them, or do you just, have them play? And, you know, is there any prep work before and follow up work after the actual audition day that you're there? If you can give us an insight into your
Sure.
scoop on it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think my approach differs too much from what I've heard around people in the state do. Um, I think it's really beneficial to be able to do individual auditions as opposed to a group one, if that's possible. It takes a little more time, but it's worth the time, because these kids are going to be yours for 7 years. It may
Yeah.
take a couple of couple hours on a couple of days, but it's well worth it. I have the kids come in usually with their parent, if their parent can be there, because it's really good if the parent can see everything. I have a pad set up, and I have usually when they come in, the whole thing, from the start to the finish, I'm watching their eye contact, I'm watching their attentiveness, just their behavior, how they sit, how they speak, everything from the get go. They are being analyzed from the minute they walk in to the minute they walk out. And that's part of their score. I give them a score. Everybody has a different point system. I keep mine at a 40, and I have like 10 categories, and that's one of them is their attentiveness and their just their articulate, just everything about that. You can tell a lot. If I'm doing something with them and their eyes are going all over the place, then we probably have an attention problem. The first thing I do is I do a little repeat the beats on the knees. I play rhythm, they play it back. Then I do some coordination stuff where I tap my foot and they follow me, and I'll play on the downbeats and the upbeats. And then I'll give them a pair of sticks and have them play, 8 on the right hand. Either just kind of see what kind of natural draw they have to a stick when they put it in their hands. A lot of times when you have a kid and you say, hey, can you use your wrist, and they're doing this, you can usually tell that's probably not going to be the best perfect fit for that kid most of the
Yeah.
time. So just things like that, just some really common folk thing that I think a lot of people would probably agree with. As far as keyboard experience, people say, well, they got to at least play keyboard for 3 or 4 years. I think that's great, but the experience doesn't mean anything if it's been a bad experience. For
Yeah.
instance, I get a kid that says they played for 2 years. I said, great. I point to middle C. I said, what note's that? And they go, I don't know. Then I know that their piano experience is a little different one, so you want to make sure that you validate their keyboard experience by maybe, checking out to make sure they know where notes are on the bells or on the staff, and that they,
Yeah.
if they can identify that, then their experience was a healthy one. But I think you can't take it at face value. You need to kind of investigate that, make sure. If
Yes.
you have access to any of their previous teachers, as far as their music teachers, or there's nobody there, as far
Yeah.
as their music teachers or counselors or anything, it's always good to get any kind of background information you can get if you have access to that. Um, and I usually I don't do I usually just do it all in one round. Some people will do like a preliminary round and then have them come back. I try not to get too much into that. I think I
Yeah.
can all my results. And I guess it depends on how many kids you have. If you were talking like, anywhere from 50 to 70 kids, you don't have to do that. I don't know. Now, interestingly enough, with the pandemic, I wasn't able to do what I just told you. I mean, it was really not possible. So last year's beginners, this year that we just finished, that was pretty much a roll of the dice with a lot of them. We just kind of put them in the classes. Now we were unable to do it again this year. They wouldn't let us do recruiting in our district again. And so I actually put a video together this time, and it was very interesting. I have to say, depending on how it goes, let's wait and see how the year goes. If it goes great, then I'll tell you, man, I got the system that's killer. If it doesn't
Yes.
go well, I don't know. But I did kind of the same thing. But you talk about, I put together a 5-minute video. It was not longer than 5 minutes. And they had to watch the video and then record themselves watching the video, and they sent it back. And so in the video, I would do, okay, do this for me. And I would tap and they would follow along. So everything was in real time, if that makes sense. There was no delay because they had to record themselves from what they were hearing. That makes sense. So when they sent me the recording, they had to stay with me on the video. So I did some things where, repeat the beat like I would play. And they'd have to play it back in tempo. I had them tapping their foot. They had to set the camera where I could see the foot and the hands. And once again, I don't think I'm doing anything that some of you guys out there already did as well. But I was really pleased with how I was able to select the kids. I don't know how that's going to translate yet because we haven't met, but we're going to find out in a very short amount of time if I was able to get the right or not. It took a lot less time though because each video was 5 minutes. And you can just sit in your house and I could just going through. I think I went through 40 or 45 like in about an hour and a half. It didn't take long at all. And if I'd done those in person, that would be 45 minutes in person. I think 5 hours almost.
Yeah.
So I think if it worked, I may go to do this the next time if it works, because I was really happy
Yes.
with it. I mean, I was happy with
Yes.
what I saw, the being able to to distinguish who should be in and who shouldn't.
Yeah.
But I'm interested to see if it pays off. So we got
Yes. And
don't know the
uh,
verdict on that one.
and I think we had we all went through the experience teaching remotely, that students would log on but they weren't there. You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah.
Or they were
Hmm.
there, you could see them on the camera if they turned their camera on, but they were playing video games on another
Yeah,
screen.
yeah, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you could see
There,
them,
there,
but they
there
were
was
doing.
there was one kid that sent in a video a couple of months ago, the one that we're talking about, the beginner one, and she was watching the screen, watching me on the screen, and I was watching her, and there was a dog that was going, and she never once looked at the dog, and the dog was going all over the place. I was like, wow, this girl's got some great attention skills.
Yes, that's where I
Because
was going at. That's where I
yeah,
was going at. You get to see them on their natural state, and it's really totally up to them if they're going to pay attention or not and
yeah.
interact with a video or not.
Yeah, I mean, even on that video, you can tell their attentive skills. That's what I was so impressed with is like, am I going to be able to tell this from the video? And believe it or not, 5 minutes wasn't, I could tell if they could hold it in for 5 minutes. There was
Yes.
one girl, there was another one I had, just, another one. She did her video outside, and I was thinking, "Ooh, this is not gonna go well," with all
Yeah.
the distractions outside. I could hear the wind blowing and stuff. But man, I didn't select her, but man, her attentiveness was right on. I mean, she was so focused on what I was saying. I was very impressed with her attentiveness. I even
Yeah.
told the band that you guys need to put this girl on something good because she's gonna be a good band kid for sure. And she
Yes.
was so focused, lasered in on what I was saying. So that's kind of one of the
That's
things I
beautiful.
look for. That's a big deal, is the attentiveness. Because when you're
Yes.
teaching kids, the beginning of the percussion year, there's more talk than there is playing the first couple of weeks until we can get to a point where we can just kind of turn on the metronome and go. And
Yes.
they need to be able to listen to what you're asking them to do and how to do it. And if they can't pay attention, it's hard to get the information. Yeah.
We have one more question, and this might be our last, Kenan, unless you want to go any longer. It's totally up to you. Robert, his question is, what is your secret in working with the weak hand? I guess left if you're right-handed, or right hand if you're left-handed, right?
Well, it's pretty easy. Just spend more time on the weekend, like whatever you can do to spend more reps on that, whatever, we do exercise. Every exercise I think in my book, we do with the right, but we do it with the left hand lead as well. So you want to make sure that they're getting leads off of both hands. Everybody has a dominant hand for the most part. I happen to be left-handed. A lot of my students, I would say 90% or higher, are right-handed. That seems to be the common one. So, um, I just I do talk to kids about trying to make the strokes even hand to hand. So we'll start a lot of things, starting with our opposite hand, whether that may be the left hand, or if we're starting with the left, we may start with the right hand. But I do know that most all the exercises in the book, maybe not every single one of them, but most all of them will do some right and then left hand alternating or switching to the left hand. So that's my best advice is we just have to spend time starting with that weak hand, and getting it evolved and really listening. Um, I think a lot of that too. Sometimes it's just a matter of playing on a surface you can hear your hands. I love the real feel pads. Don't get me wrong, but sometimes I can't hear. I can't hear too well on those, and we use the plastic pads so I can hear a little bit more how their hands are, reacting or not reacting to the pads. Um, so I think there's not really a secret. It's just more reps on the weekend. I wish I could tell
Yeah.
you there was a secret. I don't think
Y-
there
y-
is.
Yes. I, to me, I've been analyzing throughout our conversation and the conversations that we had before the stream. Um, it's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Or keep it
Hmm.
stupid, simple, right? Depending on how people are used to hearing it. Um, it's not rocket science. It's just do it right and do it more, and uh, getting the perfect, the highest amount of perfect or right, right, right
Yeah.
type of reps.
The ones that we live by, I probably stole this from somebody, I don't know who it was, but we do the three T's, and in this order: um, time, touch, and taste. And the reason we do them in that order, because if they can't play in time, it doesn't matter how good you sound. We don't want to listen to it. It has to be in time. You have to be able to play in tempo, in time. And then after you can do that, do you have a really good sound? Do you sound good when you play the drum? You have a good touch. And then taste is dynamics. Do you have, do you have something that nobody else has? Do you have a little musicality, touch? And we use those three T's in everything that we do, whether it's marching percussion, whether it's concert percussion. It's that order. You have to play in time. That's the most important thing any musician can do is play in time. If you can't play in
Yeah.
time, it doesn't matter if you're playing the right notes, they're in the wrong place. You understand what I'm
Yes.
saying? I
It's
used to
wrong.
have this
Yeah.
I used to have this conversation with Miss Drinkwater when she was at Marcus. We used to talk about that. And sometimes she go, well, mate, no, she goes, yeah. We would debate it. And I said, well, we're going to go with time first because time is the most important thing. You have to play in time. Granted, there are situations where you may be playing something that has a lot of stretch to it, and that we get that if it's a special sort of style that you're going to interpret. But by and large, our kids are playing. We want them to play in time. That's how we play in an ensemble. Is you have to play in time for everything to lock in. And once you can play in time, then are you making a good sound on your instruments? I mean, you have to make a good sound. If you're not making a good sound, and then it's going to take away. And then we get into the dynamics. I know when I judge all region, that's the order I go in. I mean, I hope that's what most people are doing. When they come in
Yes.
and
Yes.
their snare etude, is it in time? Are you playing are you playing in time? Are you steady pulse? Okay. Are you playing with a good touch? I'm not talking about rhythms. Most of the time they all know the rhythms. I mean, let's get
Yeah.
real. You judge all region, 90% of the kids are going to play the right rhythms. They all have it memorized by then. So who plays it the most in time? And then who has a really good touch on the drum when they play it? And then is there some kind of taste, like your musicality?
Hmm.
Um, and so those are really the three T's that we live by. And we start that as early as sixth grade all the way through 12th grade,
Yeah.
just we just kind of preach it all the time.
It's funny that you say that because I've noticed that like at the state level when we go and hear the kids that made state and then they're auditioning for the chairs right in state of a band, and sometimes you'll hear a kid that's like a metronome, solid, straight,
Yeah.
flawless, and it has a beautiful flow. But then you're like, oh man, his sound is like his accents are,
Yeah.
he needs to back off. But you can tell that it was his timing that pushed him through his region and in his
Mhm.
area to advance to state. And to me,
Yeah.
that's a big testament of timing has to be there.
Yeah.
And sometimes sound quality, sometimes depending on the pool of kids that are competing, sometimes is
Mhm.
not going to be that important.
Yep. I mean, all three of those elements are important, but
Yes.
what they weight it at different times. But ultimately, in my opinion, the kid has to play in. If they're not playing in time, well, then your snare line's going to sound bad. If they're not playing in
Yeah.
time, your bass line's going to sound bad. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the bottom line. You got to play in time.
Exactly.
It doesn't
Exactly.
matter
Exactly.
how good you sound when you play the snare drum. You could be the best snare drummer in the world. And we had this conversation. I know that when I marched with John Wooten. I think everybody knows who John Wooten is. He's Dr. Throwdown. And we used to he would say, hey man, I've played with, I'm great snare drummers and they can't play in a snare line at all. It's not really about the greatest snare drummer. It's about being able to listen and play in time, and being able
Yes.
to adjust.
Yes.
And so playing in time is real important and playing in an ensemble. And
Yes.
that's what I want my kids to be able to do. Now, if you're training somebody to be a soloist, then we can take this, we can change this up. But
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm not really training my kids to be a solo player anywhere. I don't think any educator in a school is really designing their kid to be a soloist. I want them to be able to experience music with others. That's
Yes.
the beauty of music is being able to play it with your friends and be able to, have fun with other people playing music.
Yes.
I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a soloist, but um, it's probably not the way that I would like to train my kids. I want them to be, musicians that can play with other musicians. And so
Yeah.
playing in time is just a really big deal. You know, I think that when we grade our kids and we listen to them, that's what you're listening to. Are you playing in time? Oh, you rushed that one measure. You dragged that measure. I mean, it
Yeah.
just sticks out like a sore thumb.
Yes.
And the
Yes.
sound quality is a huge deal too. I mean, like I said, those things are almost neck and neck. The sound quality and time is almost neck and neck, but I would put, in my opinion, I'd put playing in time just a little bit above the sound quality, like
Yes.
about
I agree.
a percentage or two.
I agree.
But they're
I would
very
tend.
they're very big. They're both very strong elements to our, when we
Yes.
teach kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I've been to some accompanying my son to drum corps auditions, and sometimes you see all these factors in play, all right? And sometimes you'll hear a kid that is like, his sound is mesmerizing. It's like, oh my gosh, this kid has a beautiful sound. But then you see him tick and not play as clean, right? And it's like, oh
Yeah.
man, he's not gonna make it. And sure enough, another kid that has a good timing and his sound is not as good as his, but this kid's gonna be clean. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. It's
yeah,
just it's really interesting, and as a as we get into teaching percussion, you have to be able to balance those and make sure that those are things that you really want your students to be able to do.
yes,
They're both
exactly.
very important elements. It's
Yes,
not playing, it's not about what you can play. It's more like how can you play it? How well do
yes,
you play? It,
yes,
it doesn't bother me to hear a drum line or percussion ensemble that's playing something really simple, but they play it really well. That's what really attracts
yes,
me to it. You know what I'm saying?
yes, yes.
It's not the
Stephen
difficulty.
Stephen Chick says, how do you leave the drum? It's not how you
Mhm.
get to the drum, how you get to the bar, how you get to the surface. It's how you leave the surface. Yes,
Mhm.
uh,
Yeah, it's
Kenan,
just
uh, it's it's been amazing to infinity degree, if that is even a phrase. I just made it a phrase
you just made it one.
because yeah, the wealth of gold nuggets that you shared with us, I'm sure it would benefit a lot, for all of us to go back and catch the replay and take notes. Um, we all want to be better. We all want to get better. We all want to be a better teacher. We want our students to be better performers and better students, better learners. And it's by taking this, I like to equivalent or equate it to going to TMEA. We're getting access, thanks to the internet, to amazing clinicians like yourself that get to share your knowledge. And we go to TMEA, to TBA, to PASIC, to be able to learn and to make our craft better. It's no different. But instead of
Mhm.
seeing Kennan Wylie at TMEA giving us a clinic, he came from his office to your house, and the knowledge and the gold nuggets and the benefit to oneself as a teacher and our students is going to be there. So I think it'll behoove all of us to really hone in and zoom in on all the juicy details that you have shared with us, and our teaching will get better. Um, I, I am humbled. I am honored to be able to have you in our episode 4 of Valley Percussion Festival Summer Series, sir. Can't thank you enough. Um,
Well,
it,
appreciate you having me, Gilbert. You're doing a great thing here for a lot of people, and I'm sure a lot of people appreciate your work on just putting this whole festival gone for as long as you have, and now you're taking it a step further in the summer, and it's really cool. I mean, I've been checking it out. I'm not gonna
Thank you.
lie, I've been watching it and
Yeah,
checking it out, and there's a
yeah,
lot of good stuff. I watched Norm's last weekend, and it was really
yes,
really good. I learned a lot just
yes,
by watching.
yes. My
So
what we're planning on doing is taking all these segments and putting out down the timestamps. That way, people
mhm,
can scan through it a lot quicker.
Yeah.
On the replay, I noticed that on the replay, it tends to really get seen a lot. I guess people will just like bookmark it somehow, right? A reminder
Yeah.
or like it, and then they'll go back to it. And I notice it gets up pretty high there. So,
Well,
uh,
if anybody watches this and they have any questions, feel free to contact me. You can email me or whatever, and we can talk on the phone or whatever.
yeah,
More than happy to talk percussion anytime. I mean, it's kind of what I've been doing for most of my life. So to talk about it is pretty fun. So I don't have anything to hide or anything. Just want to help anybody I can. So if that
yes.
means talking on the phone for a little bit, we'll wrap on the phone or whatever.
Yes, thank you so much. Now, one last thing, sir. What would you to close this? How would you summarize today? One last word for our viewers and our listeners and all of those people that will catch the replay.
Um, I think I mean about what we discussed today.
Yes,
I think we just discussed, kind of what we kind of think is important in percussion education when we teach kids, elements of how we do it and why we do it, and hopefully some of these things will resonate with some of the people out there. And like I said, if you have questions, we were very general, so we could always get more specific on any topic. But it's such a huge topic that it's hard to get really specific sometimes, unless you put me in a box and say, well, all we're going to talk about is the sixth grade year. We could spend a whole podcast just talking about what I do each month and how I introduce it. But we kind of rounded it out, made it a little more general. So I think we spent a time talking about vertical alignment a little bit. And then
yes,
we also spent some time talking about what we think are some of the valuable things about what we teach our kids. And maybe one of the most important things we talked about is not giving up on students, that don't get what
yes,
we're working on at that point. It's just don't give up on kids. They'll figure it out. You know.
yes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And any just recapping, guys. When is it, sir? 2022 that you have your new
The
version or
anniversary book, yeah, anniversary book is going to come out in February of 2022, and the virtual classroom is up and going, so you can go look at that. You can try a little 7-day trial, check out some of the videos and see what I was talking about as far as how I sequence stuff. And you don't have to go in the order that I do it in. I'm just giving you the information. I think there's 37 lessons. I think you can do it for 7 days and they won't charge you anything. You can just check it out, see if that's something you might want to keep around.
Mhm.
um, and let me know what you think. I'd love to
Yeah,
hear what you guys
awesome.
think about the videos. They're awful or
I-
they're pretty good or whatever.
if you could send me the link, sir, that way I can post it next to the link for this live stream, and I can post the link to your website and your virtual
Okay,
classroom, and that way
we'll
people
get
can
it
have
done.
access to it. Yes, sir, I again honored and humbled to have you here, and hopefully this is not the last time, but the first of many that we get to have you here, because you are definitely a wealth of knowledge and information, and we would, I know personally, I would love to learn more from you in different topics that we face as educators.
Yeah. Well, anytime, Gilbert. I'm always honored to be here. So you just give me the word and we'll make it happen.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Well, with this, ladies and gentlemen, we are signing off. Uh, Kennan Wylie mentioned John Wooden, and for today, guys, we have a double uh, summer series. Yes, John Wooden. Last night, me and him were talking, it was late last night, so I didn't get to promo it. But today at 7, and I'll put the link up in a bit. Today at 7, John Wooden is going to be doing a summer series episode at 7 p.m. today. So be on the lookout for that. And I'm eager, having two greats on the same day. I'm pretty excited about that.
Me and John marched next to each other for a year in the regiment.
Really?
That's how I know John. Yeah, we go way back.
Wow. How things happen, you know. I had you, and then he's having on the same day, and you guys happen to spend time together. You guys went to the same school as well. Am I correct?
Yeah, we went to North Texas. Yeah, we marched together at North Texas too. So me and John go
Wow.
back. Yeah,
Wow.
long time.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. Well, with this set, people, see you today at 7. Kennan, amazing to have you here. Uh, Peeps, enjoy the replay. I know a lot of you do that, so we'll be seeing you. Take care. Be safe.